Hello everyone. Welcome to this session on Indian economy here at VISHNU IS. In this session, we are going to see how to approach the Indian economy paper and Indian economy module from both the prelims and mains perspective. My name is Puran Reddy and I'll be the economy mentor here at VISHNU IS. So, first and foremost, the first question that comes to the mind of a student is, what is the difference between economy and economics and what needs to be prepared for this examination? Remember that the focus of this examination is primarily on economy, that is Indian economy. That being said, it doesn't mean that economics is not relevant for the focus of this examination. In fact, without the knowledge of economics, you can't make the head and tail of Indian economy. So obviously, economics will be your starting point, but the focus will be on the Indian economy. That is also the reason why UPSC said that it is Indian economy. If you look at your syllabus copy, it says it's Indian economy, not your economics. So remember that the focus of the examination is mostly on Indian economics and Indian economy. So your economics will be your starting point. Then the application part will be your Indian economy. Then the next question that comes to the mind of the students is what to differentiate, how to differentiate, and when to start and what to read for prelims, mains and interview. Remember that the day you are separating your preparation, the day you are differentiating your preparation into prelims, mains and interview, that is into three parts, it means that there is fundamentally something wrong in your strategy for the examination. Why am I saying that? Because you need not and you should not separate the preparation into prelims, mains and interview. The preparation for these three levels of the examination always should go parallelly, and I'm not talking just about GS paper 3 or Indian economy, I'm talking about all the other modules of the examination as well. Prelims is, as all of you know, is an objective type. Mains is a descriptive type. Mains is your descriptive type. And interview is all about your personality and your take on social issues. And of course, social issues will be having economic issues as part of them. So, how can you differentiate? How can you separate having an opinion? Let's say that interview is the third stage. Of course, it's a third stage. How can you have an opinion on something all of a sudden without having a knowledge of your basics, which is nothing but your prelims, and without having the analytical ability to look into an issue, which is nothing but your mains? So, the first thing that you need to remember, particularly about Indian economy module, for both your prelims and GS paper 3 is that do not separate your preparation into three parts. That's one of the basic mistakes. So your preparation for all the three levels will be done, should be done parallelly, and that's the number one focus here at VISHNU IS. Rest assured, this is our responsibility to make you equipped for all the three stages of the examination in every topic that we are handling. And so is the case with Indian economy, which is my domain. Then comes, while you are looking at economy, the breakdown of topics and trends. See, trends is one of the favorite topic. UPSC trends, breaking down, de-jargoning of UPSC trends. That's one of the favorite topics of so many YouTube videos, and also most of you are looking for that, in fact. So, don't worry, we'll be addressing even the trends part in this video and breakdown of topics. See, the minute Economy, the minute you hear about economy, I'm sure for most of you, economy is that trickiest module of all the preparation. Rest of the modules you will be doing something, you will be pulling out rabbits out of your hat. But when it comes to economy, most of you find it very difficult. There is a reason for that, because economy is never taught the way it should be taught, and it was never given the focus it's supposed to be given until now. And yes, the subject is a bit technical, particularly the economics part is the technical part. So is most of your other modules. So are the other modules. Geography is technical. So while we are talking about the breaking down of topics, and after breaking down, if we look at while we are looking at the trends, this is what I'll be helping you with. I'll be helping you with how to look at economy and how to simplify the economy module as such. And this is another thing. What to read from the newspaper. What to read from newspaper. For paper 2 and particularly for your polity and governance part, it's very easy to pick up the topic of current affairs that appears in your newspaper. But when it comes to economics, most of the times, I'm sure some of you must have already faced it. Which topic is relevant for the examination, which topic is not relevant for the examination. How to sift. All of you must be reading Hindu. So in the Hindu business section, which topic to read and which topic to not. In fact, remember this, to answer this particular question for the economy module. In fact, this applies to other modules as well, but let's not get into the others. Remember, the thumb rule of this examination for your Indian economy is whatever the government does is part of your syllabus, and whatever the government is not doing is not part of your syllabus. Whatever the government does is part of the syllabus. So, while you are looking at the business section of your Hindu, there will be many topics, right? So, in the initial days of your preparation, what you got to do is find out those articles where there is a take, where there is an opinion, where there are certain words which have been recorded by a representative of the government. It can be a minister, it can be a bureaucrat, or it can be a policy as such. The minute someone is talking on behalf of the government, it means that government is doing something with that particular issue. Initially, use that yardstick. Whatever the government does will be the part of your syllabus. And whatever the government is not doing, it's not. So out of these 10 or so articles every day, 5 will be purely corporate news, which are not required. I'm not saying that they aren't completely out of your syllabus, but in the initial days, until you know what to read and what not to read, you can comfortably ignore them. The purely corporate topics. Some corporate leader talks about something, some profit loss statement, some results article. You can easily ignore. Just take a pen before reading, go into the articles, mark all of them as excluded, and where you have something to do with the government, mark the articles. Then come back, read these articles. That answers your question of what kind of economy articles need to be learnt, need to be understood, and need to be analyzed, and need to be made notes of from your Hindu newspaper. Then pattern analysis. We'll see how and what exactly UPSC is focusing on. In the past 4 to 5 years, what type of questions, what are the patterns that UPSC is following, and finally, what are those high focus areas that you need to focus upon. And mind you, high focus doesn't mean that the rest of the focus, the rest of the areas can be ignored completely. If you do that, you are doing at your own peril. Because this is an examination of very high stakes. You can't ignore any topic, remember that. And finally, I will be also taking a very recent current affairs topic. See, the whole issue is everyone can read a newspaper, everyone can read a newspaper article. But how are you going to take out those points which are relevant for your examination? relevant for the exam in each of the respective stages. Remember that. Meaning, a single topic is a prospective, a probable question for both prelims and mains. So I'll be taking one current affairs topic and I'll help you to break down. I'll help you to look objectively from a prelims perspective and a mains perspective of that particular topic. Moving on, if we look at the breakdown and pattern analysis, this was the weightage that UPSC has followed in the last 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So if you look at the number of questions, 18, 14, 18, 16 and 18, which means on an average there are around 16 to 17 questions from Indian economy in your prelims. Right now I'm talking about prelims. Which means there are around 16 to 17 questions, which also means what? It means Indian economy will either make or break your prelims. So there is no way that if you are thinking that, okay, I'll just ignore the economy part because it's too confusing, it's too technical, no one understands economy, and I'll focus on other areas, other aspects, and I'll maximize my scoring chances and others. I know that's how students think, but if you are doing that, then it will be next to impossible to clear the examination. What will you do? Even if you, luckily, even if you clear prelims, what will you do in mains? So rather, sit down, see what exactly economy is, see how exactly things are. Then you can tackle your prelims as well with confidence. So remember that economy will either make or break your examination, your prelims examination. Look at, if there are 16 to 17 questions, there are 32 to 34 marks and 32 to 34 not net marks. You also need to include negative marking. So for every wrong answer, people think that for every wrong answer, they are only losing 2 marks. Not really. For every wrong answer, you are losing 2.66 marks. So, economy will either break or make your prelims examination. So, sit, look at the weightage and give the respect it deserves. Give the respect that economy deserves because of the very fact that it has good weightage in the examination. So having seen that economy has enough weightage for you to not ignore, let's see the type of questions that are asked. The type of questions that are asked. If you look at the type of questions, see, this examination is completely based upon the current affairs of the past 1.5 to 2 years. It starts with 1.5 years, it may exceed. UPSC sometimes may also give some current affairs event, which is in the past 2 years. So this whole examination itself is based on current affairs. But that doesn't mean that they'll be asking you the facts, the hard facts, the facts which will be very difficult to remember, or the facts which are only good for you to regurgitate. That's not the focus of this examination. So, but current affairs will be the starting point, right? So, you will be having static questions. Starting from this, if you look at the type of questions, I'll mention certain questions which have been asked in the past years. But now, if current affairs is your starting point, you will be having a static question, static type of questions. Then you will be having dynamic. What is a static? A definition. A definition. A concept. What is dynamic one? Dynamic one is something which has happened very recently, number one, and which is also dependent upon time. Meaning, if you are looking at it from a time perspective, it may change. It will change, in fact. That's what the idea of a dynamic type of question is. Meaning the question remains same. Raghuram Rajan, the former RBI governor, in one of his interviews, he said one beautiful thing about economy. In economy is that discipline where the questions remain the same always. It's the answers which change with respect to time. That was Raghuram Rajan's perspective of Indian economy, any economy for that matter. That is what a dynamic question is. The question will remain the same, but the answer changes depending upon the time period. Are you looking at post-independence period? Are you looking at pre-reforms period? Are you looking at post-reforms period? Pre-globalization, post-globalization? So that is the dynamic type of questions. Then the conceptual. The static and conceptual, you can say more or less the same. But conceptual, purely economic, that's where your economics can come into picture. The start of the video I said, don't worry about economics. Focus on economy. But I also said that economics will be your starting point. You take the concept of economics, apply, the application part is economy. So conceptual, like what is repo rate? A simple question, a simple economic question. So that can be asked. Of course, life is not so easy. Life is never easier. Which means UPSC will try to make, in fact UPSC is there to make your life harder. Isn't that the case? Which means there will be a combination of questions. There will be a combo question where your conceptual and your current affairs related topics will be asked. That's where your level of difficulty of the questions increases. Of course, UPSC will strike a balance always. Of the 15 to 18 questions, of the 16 to 18 questions, don't think that all the questions will be difficult. There will be at least 5 to 6 questions which you will be able to answer by just doing the newspaper, by just reading the newspaper every day, following the class discussions, and taking the notes and the material whatever we give. Just a decent performance will help you to answer those 5 to 6 questions. Don't worry about them. Everyone will be able to. Of course, if you're not doing anything, you can't. Don't ask me that question. So 5 to 6 questions, yes, anyone can answer. There will be another 5 to 6 questions where your effort comes into picture. Where you have to look at the in and out of the issue, every issue. Every current affairs event, you need to go, sit back and see the static part. Every day. Every day's current affairs events of economy, you should check the static part. What are static parts? The definitions. What do they include? What do they exclude? For example, primary sector. When you come across a news report saying that economic growth has been this much, primary sector has declined, tertiary sector is increasing, manufacturing activity is on the rise. When you come across this news report, in the initial days, you should brush up your static part, right? What constitutes primary sector? What are the subsectors of the primary sector or your agriculture sector? Which particular subsector of the services sector is on the rise? So no one can help you with regarding the static part. If you're not good with the static part, you won't be able to answer these combination questions. So there will be around 5 to 6 questions, in fact, where you have to put enough effort, where you have to sit, study, go for the static part, then link it with the current affairs part. So that is your combination question. But there will also be, so there are around 10 to 12 questions, right? You still have around 3 to 4 questions. 3 to 4 questions or 3 to 5 questions, there will be the difficult questions. There will be the difficult questions. These are the questions which will separate the really hard-working students from those students who have just stopped reading, stopped working hard the minute their bodies told them. And these are, anyways, these guys will be out of the competition, remember. If you are just stopping with the 5 to 6 questions, you are out of the competition. It's as simple as that. So, out of these 3 to 4 questions or 3 to 5 questions, see, I'm not saying out of these 3 to 5 questions, you should be able to do all of them, because it will be very difficult. 2 or 3 questions, you have to leave them. If you are able to answer them, well and good. But 2 or 3 questions are miscellaneous questions. They'll be very difficult. In fact, in the next slide, we are going to see the same. So, the low-hanging fruits. What's the first thing that you need to do? Low-hanging fruits are nothing but these 5 to 6 questions, and also some questions of this, if you differentiate them as 3 types of questions, A, B and C. Low-hanging fruits will be there completely in your section A, in your part A, and your part B will also have certain low-hanging fruits. You need to just plug them and save time. So yeah, what are those low-hanging fruits? See, low-hanging fruits, as I said, you will be able to answer them by just reading the newspaper every day and coming to classes and attending them. You don't have to strain yourself at all. What are those type of questions? If you look at the type of questions, low-hanging fruits are also always having their conceptual base in the current affairs events. That's the reason I'm reiterating that current affairs becomes all the more important for you. For example, look, there was one question on merchant discount rate. I am sure no textbook that's available in the market had already printed the concept of merchant discount rate until that year. Later on, everyone starts reissuing and reprints their editions. That's a different thing. But merchant discount rate was not something which was part of the economics part. Rather, it was in news in that particular year because of the demonetization, and later on, even today it is in news because of the shift of Indian economy from a cash-based economy into a digital economy. Digital payments, the increasingly adopting rate of digital payments, the UPIs that you are paying, the wallets that you are paying. In fact, your cards, credit cards, are what are the cards you are paying? So it was in that context that MDR rate was asked. So if you just rely on some static book which you buy in the market, nobody has covered it. Later on, yes, everyone reprints the book, then they said like, yes, see, we have included. So likewise, NPS issue. NPA issues is something which your newspaper will not be there. The business section of newspaper will not be present without a newspaper article, without at least one single article with NPA issues, which is always in news current affairs. And Project Sashakt was one of the questions last year or previous year, the year before last year. Project Sashakt was a step that the government has taken for resolving NPS issue. They have just asked what is the logic or what is Project Sashakt. Likewise, intercreditor agreement. Again related with NPS issue, intercreditor agreement, where the different creditors who are giving loans, banks in this case, they come together, they sign an agreement, and they will, one or two big banks will negotiate on behalf of all the other banks. So intercreditor agreement was asked again, it was in the context of NPS issue. These are just low-hanging fruits. As I said, go through the newspaper every day, just pick out those terms. And you will be familiar. You will become familiar. It's all about how familiar are you with these terms. Likewise, interest coverage ratio last year. See, the advantage of these low-hanging fruits is that with minimal effort, with some basic understanding of the subject, you can figure out the answers from the options that are given. If you're smart enough, and if you know basics of economy, not economics. Interest coverage ratio. What is it? A firm, if it is able to, this ratio tells whether a firm is able to cover its interests. It gives the strength of the company. This interest coverage ratio can be used by banks or other creditors who give loans to these institutions. That's something which you can just come out by looking at options, right? That's the reason they are called as low-hanging fruits. If you are losing, remember, if you are losing even a single question in these low-hanging fruits, it means that there is something fundamentally wrong again with your preparation. You need to go back to basics. It's unpardonable to lose marks in these low-hanging fruits. Because next comes your tricky questions. Tricky questions will be very difficult to answer. Likewise, there was one question on BEPS. UPSC, particularly when it comes to economy, if you look at the questions, there is this favorite question of UPSC. There will be at least 2 to 3 questions every year where UPSC will say the term BEPS is associated with the following. Interest coverage ratio, which was in news. MDR rate, which was in news. So this favorite topic of UPSC, they'll give you a term which was in news recently, is associated with. And in fact, these low-hanging fruits are also called low-hanging because there won't be any confusion in your options. There will be only 4 options. There won't be multiple statement questions. They'll come in the next type, the current affairs related questions. The section B that we were talking about in the previous slide. So remember that. BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting. It's generally in news whenever OECD talks about taxation principles and when it's talking about making companies pay taxes properly. These global MNCs. So that will always be in news. So these options are the ones which will be helping you to pick up the answer, the low-hanging fruits. I'm saying that again, you cannot lose a single mark in your low-hanging fruits. It's unpardonable. Next, there will be certain current affairs questions, of course. There is no shortcut for current affairs questions. You need to know about the issue. You need to know about the facts that are associated with the issue. One such example is the equalization levy that was asked, which was also asked last year. Or which is colloquially, your media also called it as Google tax. It was introduced by the government in the budget. So you have to read it. There's no other way. Without knowing it, it's a little difficult for you to use this logic of coming or arriving at the answer from the options. That's a suicide. Don't do that. Unless you really know about the options, forget about what these YouTube videos, what these fundas, whatever the fundas you call them online. The exclusion logic of the options, exclusion criteria works only when you know at least 3 of the options or 2 of the options, not when you are completely dumb about the options that are given. So those are the current affairs related questions. Again, these are the things, everything will be covered by us. Current affairs, we know, we'll help you at VISHNU's IAS how to figure out how to read. Then, important topics. No discussion about the strategy to tackle economy or no discussion about breaking down of the module will end without talking about, sir, important topics. What are important questions? Fine. I'll answer that question as well. Of the 16 to 18 questions, there will be at least 6 to 7 or you can even say 8 questions. There will be 6 to 8 questions from these topics. These questions, these topics here, monetary policy, fiscal policy, balance of payments, inflation, GDP accounting. You can even add taxation. Of course, taxation is covered in your fiscal policy, but just to be more specific. These 5 to 6 topics will give you around 6 to 8 questions. Of the 6 to 8 questions, you should be able to answer at least 7 questions. Only one question you may lose. See, it happens. It's not that you haven't prepared, but the stress of the examination will get a better out of you. So there will be mistakes. Of course there will be mistakes. I mean, if you are asked the same question when you come out of the examination hall, you will answer it. So these are the core topics. These are like the heart and muscle and blood of economy. So you need to focus on these 4 and 5 topics. Remember that. Monetary policy, fiscal policy, balance of payments, inflation, national income accounting or your GDP accounting, and your taxation. Then add current affairs. For each of this topic, add current affairs. What did the government do? See, current affairs are nothing but what did the government do in that particular aspect, in that particular module. Then economic survey questions. 1 or 2 questions. 1 question will be particularly from your volume 2, that is the state of economy of your economic survey. In fact, your state, I could pick any, even we will be giving it. You can pick the abridged version, any concised version of economic survey, and you can go through the volume 2, not volume 1, state of economy. When you read those 10 chapters, it will give you a lot of content for your essay and as well as for your mains. It will introduce you to the latest trends. There is one question with respect to trends, with respect to bilateral trade. In 2020 there was a question on India's and Sri Lanka's trade. That you can read that if you are reading your newspaper every day. That way you can capture the question. But your economic survey will also talk about those things. So yeah, that's to answer that one frequent question, sir, whether we need to read economic survey or not. Do a cost benefit analysis. If you think that time is less, cost as in your time, then you can. But you can't afford to ignore it for the mains. So anyway you have to read it for mains. Why don't you do it even for prelims? In that way you can even exclude the situation where you're not able to answer one question. So economic survey. Then the static part of every current affairs event. The static part of every current affairs event. Remember that. For example, PSL norm is your static part. Priority sector lending norms. It's a static part, static topic of Indian economy. But recently Government of India, RBI, has changed. Last year RBI changed the priority sector lending norms. Your responsibility is not to just read and remember the new additions to PSL norms, but you also need to include, you also need to know what are PSL norms, what are the percentages that need to be followed by Indian banks, by foreign banks. What are the subsectoral limits within priority sector lending? Agriculture has the highest weightage. That becomes your static part. So every current affairs event, you should go to the static part. Then append whatever the change that the government's policy has been done, that the government policy has brought in. Likewise, recently the Banking Regulations Amendment Act was done last year in 2019. The pandemic has really erased the differences between years, if you know what I'm saying. So the Banking Regulation Amendment Act, it is being amended to bring in the cooperative banks under the regulatory ambit of RBI, which is a potential topic for both your prelims and mains. So then you need to know about cooperative banks, the problems that are associated with cooperative banks. Then you need to talk about the amendments. So these are some of the things, some of the questions, including your new schemes. Remember, rural and agricultural sector particularly. There is no paper. I'm not just talking about, some of you will be writing other examinations as well, NABARD, RBI. If you ignore these things, you'll be losing paper, you'll be losing marks there as well. So, new schemes, every year budget will introduce new schemes in rural and agriculture sector. The Kisan credit card scheme version in 2020 was a very old scheme, but certain changes were made. Agriculture sector, rural development. So these are also, you can say, even these are your low-hanging fruits, plus that section B I was talking about, moderately difficult. They're not difficult, you can't say they are difficult. A decently prepared candidate will be able to answer them. And we'll come to those difficult questions I was talking about. These international agreement related questions. There will be one question, at least one question, which is related to the international agreements. Last year there was this TRIMS question, if I'm not wrong. That was a difficult question. No debate about it. Some of the students may say that, no, it was an easy question. It was a difficult question because it will be very difficult. Generally, when you are reading about international agreements and particularly WTO, you will be reading mostly your WTO subsidies and different types of agreements. The Doha round, the Nairobi round, likewise. But this was a bit a difficult question. Then, under this, there will be current affairs again. Merchandise export import scheme, services export import scheme, they have been stopped by Government of India. That becomes your current affairs. That is also part of international agreements. And a new modified version of the scheme has been launched. Scheme-based questions. And finally, as I said, there will be, so this TRIMS question was miscellaneous. Don't worry, you can afford to leave them. And the difficult questions. So this is how the paper, the pattern, the weightage to Indian economy has been from the past 4 to 5 years with respect to UPSC prelims. As I have promised, see, it's easier to really say that, this is where you focus, this is how you focus. I won't be stopping there. I'll give you a topic which has been in news. By the time this video gets uploaded, enough people will come across those news and what exactly is happening there. So I'll pick one such topic and will help you how to look at it from the examination perspective. So what am I talking about? The topic that I'm talking about is your G7 Global Tax Agreement, which has been signed by the G7 agreements. See, first of all, for any issue, you need to understand what are the contents. What is the discussion all about? Forget about whether it's a prelims topic or what are the topics that can be picked out of it for mains. First, you need to understand what exactly that particular topic is. Only then you will be able to look inside and see, okay, this is the prelims element and this is the mains element. Meaning what? What is this global tax agreement? Simply put, the global tax agreement, this global tax agreement is the agreement that the G7 countries have signed in Britain recently, where they said that we, as in those 7 countries, of course plus EU was there, they said that they will be charging a corporate tax minimum of 15%. Whenever this agreement is ratified, the corporate tax rate will not be less than 15. Will not be less than 15%. Then these are some of the points which go into this tax agreement. I won't go into these details, but you can always go through it. So there are two pillars. What are the two pillars? Two pillars are corporate tax rate. The two pillars which are really affecting the global taxation regulations. Currently, all the countries across the world, the global economy is being, it is facing two issues. One is with respect to corporate tax rates. Corporate tax rates. And the second one is the digital tax, or taxing the digital revenues, the revenues of these new age digital companies. These multinational organizations like Google, Facebook, Amazon, these are the new economy companies where geographical boundaries will not really create any type of hindrance for their operations, and hence for the revenues that they are raising from each of these countries. So the issue was how to address the issues surrounding the two pillars of global taxation regime. One was corporate tax and the other one was how to tax these new age digital economies and new age digital economy activities. So the agreement was trying to address both these things. One, the focus was that corporate tax will be at least 15%. And secondly, they have also addressed that these digital companies particularly, they will be based upon certain rules. That 10%, minimum of 10% threshold of net profit has been put in. Let's not get into the finer details. A 10% minimum profit will be considered, and it has introduced certain concepts. So that's the issue about. And this is what the whole global tax agreement, the constituents, the contents of the agreement are. And it also has certain environmental provisions built into it. Number one, minimum taxation rate. Number two, taxing new age economic activities. Number three, environmental concerns arising out of the economic activities of these MNCs in different countries. So that's the issue at our hand. What is important for us? So that is the issue. I am sure all of you might have come across the news report. But very rarely UPSC will ask, what is global tax agreement of G7? At least in mains, at least in prelims, there is no way that they'll ask like that. That's where you need to look. So what is relevant for prelims? First and foremost, I was talking about the low-hanging fruits, right? This particular concept, this particular topic has introduced a new term called as market countries. Favorite topic of UPSC. Market countries, which has been heard in news recently, is associated with which of the following? Market countries, as the name says, is not about market economy. That's a different concept. It's not market economy. Market countries, we are talking about those countries where these digital new age companies like Facebook and Google are operating, where they have a market and where they are deriving a considerable amount of the profits from the markets of these countries. Where these countries, market countries, is the idea that the taxation right or the share of the government's due taxes should be given to those countries where these digital companies are having a market. Without understanding the agreement itself, without reading the agreement itself, this will become difficult. Though it's a very easy question, the question in itself becomes very difficult. Remember that. So that is what your prelims, you should look from prelims perspective. Market countries, the term which is recently heard in news. Then, in fact, this entire agreement, the debates around this entire agreement, this type of an agreement, or the issues surrounding this type of agreement have always been there. India's Google tax or the equalization levy which has been introduced by the Indian government is to address this very issue. So which means UPSC, it has already asked this question, which means UPSC was ahead of even G7 in asking the question. Isn't that the case? So your Google tax or equalization levy is in itself a topic for your prelims already. These digital levies, you call them as digital levies. All countries are doing this. That's the problem. Then the very basic question, which UPSC has already asked a couple of times, what is G7? Which of the following countries are included in G7? So the minute you come across G7, Global Taxation Agreement, you should know what all countries are part of your G7. Where is the next G7 summit being held? Who will head the next summit? Those are all the static part. You should immediately go and do that whenever you are taking the examination in that particular year. Again, a prospective question. Where was the Global Taxation Agreement and where was the question of only on G7? That's how you need to look at it. Then the other types, look at these things. First of all, where does this topic of taxation agreement, global taxation agreement, fit in your topic of UPSC syllabus? It is obviously part of your taxation, right? In fact, it is part of public finance. Public finance in itself is part of your fiscal policy. The alternative to fiscal policy is monetary policy. The equivalent, not even alternative. Which the two policies are the basics of the economic public policies of India. So now come back. Fiscal policy, under fiscal policy you will have public finance. Under public finance you read taxation. You read taxation, expenditure and debt of the government. So under taxation you read many types of direct taxes, indirect taxes, in which you talk about concepts like tax evasion. You read the concept about tax avoidance. You read about round tripping, treaty shopping, in fact, you also read about DTAs, double taxation avoidance agreements. And these basics that you have learned under taxation topic relevant for prelims under this particular topic. What stops UPSC from asking these topics? These are very basics. Again, probable prelims question. The issue, prelims perspective. What did I do just now? I have placed the topic in your scheme of things. The day you are able to do that, the minute you look at a question, if you are able to place the topic, it will be easier for you to understand and to even mark the answer. Likewise, so these many prospective topics have come out of for your prelims from this particular topic. Then any mains, let's look at the mains as well. Any mains related question of a current affairs related event is incomplete without reading, without understanding about, without analyzing about the impact of that particular policy move on the country, that is on India's economic system, and also on, since this is an international agreement, it will obviously have an impact on other countries and across the world as well. So the same thing we have done here. This is impact in general. What is the impact in general? Just look at the ones which are in bold and underlined. Later on you can read others. That's the impact in general. What is happening? Corporate tax, as I said, is one of the main pillars, and the other one being the digital tax. So these are the two issues that are being addressed. So what will happen right now with this particular agreement? Now, a right to tax a slice of the profit of these large MNCs. This is MNCs. Global digital MNCs like Amazon, Facebook. So now, a right to tax a slice of the profit. What was the issue? All these days, there are different countries, right? These MNCs, they used to register their headquarters in that country which has the lowest tax rate. They register their headquarters in the lowest tax jurisdiction and they transfer all the profits from other high tax jurisdictions to this low tax jurisdiction, and they are not paying any tax to these countries. That's the problem. This is the crux of the issue. Best example, if you look at European Union, all these MNCs, particularly Apple, Google, all the European Union activities are registered in Ireland. Why? Because Ireland has the lowest of 12.5% tax rate amongst the EU nations. So register the company here, transfer all the profits, revenues here into Ireland and pay the lowest tax. In fact, they don't even pay that 12.5% because of certain kinds of exemptions and agreements between the Ireland government and these MNCs. So now this agreement is giving a right to tax a slice of these profits. Then another impact, then another impact. We've already seen that to address this issue, what did the countries do until now? Each country, including India, have started to impose their own versions of the digital taxes. There were a plethora of digital taxes which have been imposed. So now, thanks to this agreement, all these individual, the various digital taxes, including India's equalization levy, will have to be stopped. It gives certainty to investments and certainty to business operations. It is in that sense. Then, what is the target? Tech giants and tax havens are targeted. Tech giants and tax havens are targeted. Obviously, this is a target on the tax havens. Then, governments, because of this evasion or avoidance, it's a matter of perspective, whether you call it as evasion or avoidance. So, governments are, because of the COVID impact, there was no cash to carry out social sector responsibilities of the respective governments in these countries. So now governments can get some money because now they can tax the profits. Obviously, this is a bad news for tax havens around the world. Now, global tax system in the global digital age. Now, in this era of digital age, that can be updated. A new type of global taxation rules can be planned, can be devised. Then this will end a race to the bottom. Why? When there is a competitive decrease. When there is a competitive decrease of tax rates amongst the countries, it's a race to the bottom. Then, most importantly, it is the rise of multilateralism. It is the rise of multilateralism. Why? Because US is at the center stage now. All in the era of declining globalization, rise of US in making this agreement possible is also a matter of hope for the world economy. So, it is rise of a return to multilateralism is another impact of this agreement. Then, making companies declare, as I said, there's a third component to this agreement, which is nothing but your ESG norms of corporate governance. ESG. So, higher focus is now being given to the ESG norms, environment, social and governance norms under corporate governance. Under corporate governance. So the international reforms is international system, international tax system, until now the taxation system of the international economy, the global economy, was more aligned towards the post-war reconstruction phase of the 1920s. Meaning that it is more aligned towards the old economy, companies and old economic activities. But now is the chance to reframe them. Now is the chance to step into this new digital age and new rules. This is for your mains. This is how you need to look at it. It was a simple topic. But look at the aspects, look at the kind of various other avenues, various other points of the economy this particular topic is impacting. And this is impact on India. This is impact on India. Again, look at the underlined parts. India is likely to benefit. Why? Because it has decreased the taxation rates to 22% and 15% recently. 15% is for new manufacturing units and effective is 22. Of course, there are certain conditions which is not required for enough. So now India is likely to benefit. Why? Because our 15% is also similar to the 15% that they have agreed. So India can also enjoy the increased investments. But one negative impact, India has to scrap the existing digital services tax. India is a very big market of large number of tech companies. So they can't ignore India's market and concerns right now. Then explicit granting of taxing rights to market countries. Meaning now India can tax. Minimum is 15%. Above it, it's up to you what you want to charge. So now you have the granting of taxing rights to market countries. And these are India is not just a low tax regime, but India has these advantages. Large market, quality labor at competitive wages, strategic location for exports, and a thriving private sector. So these are the factors along with this particular measure which will help India. And finally, no analysis for your mains will be complete without addressing the challenges and solutions, concerns and solutions, or it can also be called as your way forward. Quickly, I'll explain what the problems are. First and foremost, they are only applicable to the largest and most profitable multinational enterprises. Meaning, very Amazon, which is a behemoth now, Amazon is excluded. Why? Because of the lower profit, that 10% threshold that they have put in. Amazon is not making 10% of profits of its total revenue. That's the problem. So Amazon will not be included in it. And you know the size and the impact that Amazon can have. So if Amazon is excluded, what good is its particular agreement? So the largest and most profitable enterprises will be only affected. So Amazon is not affected. So Amazon and many other such companies will be excluded. Then even the finer details are not really agreed upon. How will be the tax revenues split? That has not been finalized yet. Then Oxfam, which releases your global report every year, global wealth inequality report every year, it said that there is a lack of ambition. What is 15%? What will 15% do? It won't even scratch the surface of the huge profit, billions of dollars of profits that they are earning. So it says that 15% is just a starting point. It is it lacks ambitious. It lacks ambition. And importantly, any global deal should take account of smaller nations. What do we mean by that? Ireland, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, all these years, they have used this tax arbitrage opportunity, which is legal until now, it's not illegal. So they have used this tax arbitrage opportunity to attract MNCs, and their whole economies are dependent on this. So now if you suddenly pull out the rug underneath their feet, the economies will collapse. So their concerns should also be taken into consideration. And most important, in this era of declining globalization and prevailing anti-globalization wave that is sweeping across the world, imagine what will happen. So in a way, the right of the sovereign to decide a nation's tax policy is being taken away and G7 is taking it. Which means Brexit kind of events can happen again, right? Brexit, what was the reason behind Brexit? The very reason. And finally, still a lot of work is to be done to reach a global consensus. This is just G7. There are many other countries. India, China. You can't ignore India and China and agree with coming to an agreement. So these are the concerns and solutions. This is how you look at a particular topic from prelims and mains perspective. Remember, for some of you it might be very overwhelming, I know. But don't worry. Remember that this preparation is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Both the destination and also the path, your motivation levels, both of them need to be prepared for a marathon, not a sprint. This is how we are going to approach every issue at VISHNU's IAS. And this is about the strategy. This is about how to approach the Indian economy module for your UPSC examination. Once again, this is Puran Reddy, and we'll conclude this with this. If you have any questions, you can always reach us. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the bell icon for regular updates from our YouTube channel. Thank you guys.